Before, okay, it is 6:01, February 15th, 2022. I call this meeting the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting law as allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first order of business is public comments, open session, and announcements. Please note that public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Are there any? Okay, so I just have one real quick one. So Charlie is going to have to go to a finance committee meeting briefly during our meeting. So I just want to know, or everybody be aware of that. And then he'll rejoin as soon as he's done with the with his item with the finance committee. Okay. And then, so second order of business is the consent agenda. I actually need to read out the motions because they're not included in the packet.
Because of what?
I need to actually read out the motions that are part of the consent agenda because they weren't in the packet.
Okay.
So
You want me to read them?
no, I can read them. I have them written. I move to accept the appointment of Cameron Marie Scott as town treasurer. I move to approve the memorandum of agreement between the town of Wellfleet and police chief Michael Hurley as printed. I move to acknowledge the receipt of the disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest from Nancy Savetta relative to ARC. And I move to acknowledge the receipt of the disclosure of the appearance of conflict of interest from John Makovich. Sorry, I know I'm butchering his last name. Relative to ARC.
Second.
Okay, are there any that anybody wants to take out of that agenda? Okay, seeing none, can I actually have a roll call vote tonight?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay,
Did someone
Oh,
second
excuse-
that?
yep,
Yeah.
Janet seconded it.
Okay.
I know this is probably inappropriate, but I was wondering if the treasurer, Cameron Scott, could just, if he's on, just get on camera and wave or something so we could welcome him, but we can also move on.
Charlie or Rebecca, do you see him on? I don't see.
I didn't invite Cameron to the
Okay.
meeting today.
Okay, we'll meet him sooner or later. Thank you.
Okay, so on to the third order of business, which is licenses. So common victualler. Yeah. I wish I
John
would
has his
rename
hand
it.
Titular.
John, you have your hand up?
Yeah, this is out of order, so it can shut me up. But since I missed the very beginning of the meeting, I just needed to announce that it occurred to me I need to recuse myself from the community impact fee discussion and vote.
Okay. And Janet?
I just wanted to say with the consent agenda of the common victualers, we didn't get in our packet any of the information like names, addresses. And I don't feel comfortable voting on this because I don't know if they've changed hands, who the current owner is. There was just the pages were blank. So I'm not comfortable voting on this, and I would actually like to postpone it till next meeting unless somebody comes up with something.
Okay.
Jean just said that she has all the applications in her office and she doesn't usually put them in the packet.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
we
we
ha-
need to have a copy of the license. And that's how we've done all the other ones as well. Helen?
Yes, I agree with that. I was going to say that. And also some indication that it can just be verbal for all of them or however you want to do it, but that they have checked off as qualifying in the legal ways they're supposed to. And there are a number of legal ways. Thank you.
Okay, so I move to table licenses for the common victular, weekday entertainment and class 2 until February 22nd, 2022.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Is Elaine on here? I don't see
Not
her.
that I can see.
Okay, well, if she joins us, we'll go back to her, I guess.
Elaine is not in this country at this time.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Somebody has to come up with somebody to be the governor's appointee, and it could be us and it could be the housing authority. But I think we should ask the housing authority to rustle somebody up.
I do too. I
um,
agree.
Or the housing partnership. Or anybody.
Any of them, anyone on the housing
Yeah.
committees would know better than we would.
Yeah, and if the governor doesn't appoint somebody, then after 120 days, the select board can appoint somebody to fill the vacancy, which is how Mia was appointed the first time, or how Mia was appointed. But if we can, I don't know, I wish, yeah, wish her the best, and yeah. So, okay. So we're on to business item B, wild animal bylaw from member Wilson. Has everybody had an opportunity to read her most recent draft that she provided us at 2 p.m. today?
I was not sure. I was not positive. She had a couple things she said that were redundant, and there were a couple things in red, but I didn't feel at that late time to start going over it and comparing them. So I haven't read it though.
Ryan.
One second. I asked a question of the board, Helen. Mike, have you had a chance to read it?
I looked it over, but I didn't notice any changes, not redlined, maybe, I don't know.
Okay, and John?
I didn't read it, compare it to the other one.
John, did you have an opportunity to review it?
No, unfortunately, no, I did not.
Yeah. So at this point, I would actually like to remove this item from the agenda tonight.
Ryan, may I speak, please?
I mean, Helen, this
May
is,
I please address the others, if not yourself?
Okay.
respectfully? Hi, everybody. I wanted always to coordinate with our animal control officer, and he is busy. And I only went over it again with him today, just to be absolutely sure he liked it. You have all read this. And nothing has changed, except he and I had failed to realize that there was a redundant section which has been taken out. I said that in my cover note. So anything you read for previous meetings, it's exactly the same, or at least for the last meeting, as found in our warrant. And you read that he and I went over it again, which we've been over quite a few times. And the only thing that was taken out was inadvertently a section that should have come out had been left in. It was like a scrap of one of the sections. And otherwise, it's just exactly the way it was. So you've all read it, except for this one piece, which has a different set of penalties than he had asked for. And this is coming not just from me, this is coming from the animal control officer. So thank you, Ryan.
okay.
Well, I'd
Janet?
like to know how the rest of us feel
So
about it.
Helen, what would have been simpler if you had just told us right now what part was redundant or should have come out or did come out? Doesn't
I
matter
just
why.
did. I just
No, you
did.
didn't.
and
You
it was
just,
in the
you just
note.
said there's a piece that should have come out or did come out.
I don't know
What-
what it is.
What? Do you know what it is, Mike?
No, I don't know what she's,
What's the edit? What's
The edit
different?
is at the end of the bylaw, which is not very long. There's a
Doesn't matter.
section that is about the penalties. And just before it, there's another section which is labeled penalty, and it's taken out now. But it got left in the draft we got for the packet. So everything else is exactly the same. And
I'm really not sure what you're referring to. So if we're gonna
Can
vote
you
on this,
screen
and
share,
go-
it'll be obvious in about 2 seconds.
only if the chair wants to, because this is exactly what we don't want to happen.
I understand that, and I would have liked to get it to you sooner, but I was working at the behest of and at the convenience of the animal control officer.
I
Okay,
mean, this was on the agenda for last week as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I just don't see, I mean, this is the second time in 2 weeks you've provided an edit the day of a meeting.
yes, Ryan, I understand you don't like that, but the question right now is. we've
Okay,
had a
so,
certain
all right,
we did a
before
screen share,
I'm
look
gonna
at
ask the
that.
board, do the other members of the board want to take this up right now?
No. It's just, it's gotta be clear, and if this is gonna go on the warrant, it's gotta be clear,
Okay,
and it's
Mike,
not clear. It's gotta be
uh,
as printed.
I don't mind taking it up if, I just wish, when people make edits, can they please actually strike through what's edited and when
Yeah.
they send it, so we don't have to go through and look for what's been changed, because
Yeah.
so what I'm assuming here is that the section penalty has been removed and fines and penalties stays the same.
Yes,
and John,
I think, I think it's reasonably clear if we're voting on this with the fines and penalties section in place and the prior one removed. I don't have any problem voting on it. I don't know, I think it's reasonably clear.
okay. So I guess we'll take it up, but in the future, if stuff is provided this late, I'm going to take the item off the agenda, just to make that clear, unless there's extenuating circumstances, because I don't like having debates about which version people are looking at, which we've gotten into in the past. Is a really inefficient use of our time. So we'll take it up tonight, but in the future, more than likely, if similar things happen, I will probably remove them from the agenda. So just so it's clear to everybody, okay?
so can I make a motion, or do you want to do a screen share, everybody, through you, Ryan?
I mean,
Can I make a motion?
no, I would say present first.
Okay, maybe, Rebecca, can you please do a screen share of what I sent out this afternoon? Thank you. Is that possible?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Sure. Meeting tonight. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, give me a second. Unless Rebecca's pulled it. All right. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay. Are we home?
I have it, Ryan, if you want
Yep.
it. Want me?
I just got it, so. Okay, can you see it? Is it up on the screen?
Scroll down.
I only see the email.
Okay, let me try that again. Stop. Okay, what about now?
Yeah, there it is. If you go down to the bottom, please. Everything is the same as we had it, except between enforcement and fines and penalties was a hunk of text which had not been taken out, and it was by mistake it hadn't been taken out. Okay, the rest of it is just the way it was before.
So, all right, so is it the pen, like, so Helen, I kind of want you to say more than a chunk has been taken out.
Okay.
Like, again,
Enforcement.
this is like turning into our bylaws. It needs to be specific, especially for the audience, so.
As I said before, and that's reasonable. Thank you for asking for clarification. There are different sections, and after enforcement, inadvertently, a section labeled penalties, which didn't apply. It was what Officer Keogh and I looked at, and he said, you know, we don't want that set of penalties in here. We want what we have below. Ryan, if you could scroll down to the entire thing of fines and penalties. So it was called penalties. It shouldn't have been in there, and this is what should be in there. And the only thing that needs to be put in is what article, you know, which article of the general bylaws we want to put it in it, you know. So that's the reason those are red X's. Right? In other words, where do we want to stick it in the general bylaws? And that would be the XX. General bylaws are divided into articles, not chapters, not sections. They're called articles. And then whatever section of that article we want to make it. But otherwise, it's complete. It's been gone over multiple times. And Officer Keogh and I just caught this afternoon, and we both went, oops, we didn't, you know, that didn't get cleaned up. That was stupid. We both, you know, felt apologetic about it. But otherwise, it's just what you've seen before and gone over multiple times by us, comparing to multiple documents from other places, and most important, by the regulations of the National Park Service. So that's all I know. And I hope it feels more clear now. If you want to scroll up, we can look at where this other thing used to be, which was just a different set of penalties that shouldn't have been in here. It was dragged over from something else. Okay.
Okay.
There was a drafting error.
So I can't support this bylaw in any shape or form. Your original intent was, you heard that somebody was feeding coyotes and you wanted to address feeding of coyotes, and it's kind of morphed into this really restrictive bylaw that could impact a lot of people. I mean, we still have stuff about bird feeders and that they have to be suspended by a cable. You know, squirrels, basically, squirrels or particularly raccoons are really clever. They'll get to those bird feeders one way or the other. I just think it's really restrictive and is not a good bylaw for Wellfleet. But that's just my feelings on it.
Well, I agree, but if Officer Keogh needs this to enforce it, I mean, that's kind of what I was wondering, is this so that he can enforce that, or, because I agree, so I always think it's funny that we add more bylaws like this. I guess it's not funny, but yeah, I mean, Helen simplified it a lot with taking a lot of the bird feeding stuff out of it. I don't like it, but I would vote for it if everybody else voted for it.
Helen?
Yes, I want to remind you about something our health agent sent out a few years ago. This addresses the fact that we have we have an explosion of rats. It's all over the Cape. I confirmed that with Officer Keogh again about the rest of the Cape. I'm aware of the Outer Cape. And we got, that is to say, the entire town, I believe, or maybe just the neighborhoods where they were the worst, like mine, the entire town had an explosion of rats. And this has wonderful exceptions in it. The bird feeding exception was in there from the get-go. That was something that came from a model bylaw that I actually found pretty usable. But we have a situation where people don't understand that if you have an open compost, you are feeding whatever can get into it. And for example, rats can get into compost really easily. And I had that happen on our property because chickens were being open fed across the road. And we've all addressed that in my immediate neighborhood now. But it's a real issue. And there are a lot of rats and there are a lot of animals which are attracted and made they feel safer around people. And what happened last summer with those coyotes having to be killed and the kid being bitten is all part of this. And Officer Keogh had a conflicting thing today, but we really need this. And it didn't come from me, although I had direct experience with it because I had a neighbor who was a wonderful neighbor, except he fed coyotes and it was difficult to live next to like wild animals. So I really hope that we can pass this. And what I had heard from more than one person was that there was nothing on the books about this. And then Officer Keogh apparently told one of the people who also complained to me about something happening this year, that Officer Keogh said to him, I don't have any regulation or bylaw, and the state doesn't either, that can do anything about it. Now the park has something. And if you go up to the top, Ryan, please scroll up to the top.
This is the Word document right now. It's not the park. And when I frankly don't.
No, I just want to show you one section that's very good. Please. I'm sorry, it's prohibitions. Here we go. It does more than just say you don't feed, because if people put stuff out, they can say, well, I'm not feeding deliberately, but if the animal can get at it, you're feeding them. Here it says, you know, don't do all these other things to hurt wildlife. And that is from the parks document. And I think it's good because not everybody understands that. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, Janet?
So I just want to say that from the Audubon Society and the Center for Coastal Studies, their biologists have said that the spread of rats has come from chickens, because we have so many chickens, and also from water level rising, because they like the marsh and everything, and they're moving into higher ground. So, I mean, I think that this is whatever. It's just one of those bylaws that if it makes people happy, I'll vote for it, but I don't think it's a perfect solution to rats or coyotes. They're very good at adapting and living.
So I would say there's a huge difference between stuff that might happen on somebody's private property as opposed to what would happen on park lands. You know, if you can't intentionally disturb wildlife, which is defined basically as almost everything that has four legs. If somebody has a raccoon in their chimney that's breeding, that's technically illegal to disturb that raccoon under this bylaw.
If you look further down, you can do that. You can not, in other words, if you scroll down, there's a whole part about one of those sections. Here we go, 7. In other words, you can get rid of animals. Like I can trap rats and trap mice, which I unfortunately have had to do. Okay, so it's a well-crafted bylaw because it brings in and even cites, managing situations like that, Ryan. I feel it's very humane, and the punchline is we really need not to give wild animals stuff beyond what they can get from the wild. It disrupts their whole system. It's bad for their breeding habits. It does all kinds of things. And Janet, I know you're right. Sea level rise will affect things, but having chickens, there's a whole thing about management of feed, which, you know, I've got chickens. If you don't manage it well, the rats will come. And I have done very good management of my feed because I grew up with rats because of my proximity to the dump. And I really don't want rats in the house anymore, and hadn't had them until recently.
Okay, so here on 4 for the exception, any person with a bird feeder, provided the feeder is suspended on a cable or other device to make it inaccessible to wild mammals. And the area below the feeder is kept free from the accumulation of seed debris. Again, this is basically outlawing bird feeders within the town of Wellfleet.
It's impossible to keep seeds from falling out of those.
Well, this is to make the best effort, obviously. And if I had a bird feeder, which I don't, I have a lot of things birds eat on my property without that. But people I know with bird feeders make a point of making sure that what's beneath their bird feeders isn't just like a feeding ground. And nobody's going to enforce it unless it's a problem. So if you wanted to take out the bird feeder thing, fine. But the rest of it is really, I think, humanely necessary in terms of our relationship with wildlife. This is just me. Officer Keogh couldn't be here. You've had opportunities to speak with him. Some of you have. And I would like to, you know, pass this now so that he will have something on the books starting after town meeting.
So just briefly, you know, some of you have been to my house. I'm out on my deck, I'm eating an apple and I throw my apple core into the woods. Am I going to be fined or arrested? I mean, these are little things. I know that that's over the top, but it's possible or probable. So I don't know. I kind of want to move on from this or vote on it and let town meeting decide.
Mike?
I just don't know that this is the most effective way to actually keep people from feeding wild, putting it in our zoning bylaws with sort of like a heavy hand and a restriction. I think we'd be much better served by putting signs out throughout town that say, please do not feed the wildlife. I think people's or you know, having something much more simple like the policy of Wellfleet that intentionally feeding wildlife with the exception of bird feeders is prohibited, or something very simple like that. I just think I don't think we need to just be piling on more and more rules that people have to worry about when we could better be served by actually just informing people that it's harmful to actually feed wildlife in the wild.
Ryan, may I
feel about it. And I don't think that, you know, asking people to keep bird feeders on cables is necessary. Sometimes there's, you know, it's like there's elderly people that are bird feeders that are like on their porch or whatever, or hanging from their window or from a tree. And like, are we really going to expect them to all go out there and make sure there's no seeds on the ground, like in the winter time or whatever? I just think, you know, there's no need. I don't think we need to make it this complicated.
Ryan, I suggest we take out the bird feeder section.
If we take out the exception for bird feeders, then bird feeders are outlawed completely.
No. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, well, how about just any person with a bird feeder, period? Yeah, that's fine.
John?
And wait, I needed to say something else. So Officer Kehoe isn't here, but he has had a number of people really anxious, really stressed, and really, it's not a good situation with neighbors who they've asked in a friendly way, because one always, contacts the neighbor first, please stop feeding the coyotes really and the raccoons, but it's the coyotes that are more of a concern because I've got a little dog or I've got a cat and the coyotes come into my backyard and Officer Kehoe can go over there and say something, but the people just keep on doing it. And so, Mike, in a good world, what you suggested would work and it might help. And a lot of people know not to feed wildlife, but some people don't care. And I know of 3 different situations like that besides what I just mentioned. And so listening to the animal control officer, I get why they need to have something on here. Meanwhile, what does anybody think about simply taking out the rest of section?
Helen, I have to get to John here. So,
Okay, I'm done.
John.
Thanks.
It seems to me the big issue here is the feeding of coyotes. And I agree. And I think what needs to be done is to give Officer Kehoe and law enforcement in general the tools necessary to address that specific issue. It seems to me that the way to do that is to craft a bylaw specifically for that, make the fines meaningful, so that somebody who actually has been reported and is continuing to feed coyotes, even after they've been asked to stop, will be slapped with a fine big enough to make an impression on them. All this other stuff is just, it doesn't need to be here. It simply doesn't need to be here. I think we have a specific problem. It calls for a specific solution. And that's, I should think that would be the way to handle it.
I would agree with that too. But I know Helen wants to, Helen.
Yeah, unfortunately, John, and this came up, of course, coyotes are omnivorous. So are fox, so are fisher cats. And that's part of the problem. So if you put an attractant out, and there are people that do it just so they can watch the wildlife eating, which is amazing, but it has side effects. What we don't want are coyotes coming up onto people's decks and people's children and animals being harmed. And we also don't want to screw up the animals, the wild animals breeding methods, which have to do with food sources. And John, if we could just have it for coyotes, I hear you. But unfortunately, anything that a coyote can eat, a lot of these other creatures can eat too. Feral cats are omnivorous, fox, fisher cats. I think weasels are too. Rats certainly are. Deer are not. There are a few things deer don't eat. Raccoons are omnivorous and squirrels are omnivorous. I don't know about skunks and I don't know about opossums. So all these other animals eat this stuff. And that's part of the issue.
So if I might make a suggestion, I would suggest that rather than saying wild animal and defining just a subset of animals as being wild animals, to be a little bit more specific and say, wild predatory animals with a more specific one, because otherwise it is, I just think it's overkill.
They all predate other things except for skunk. Well, what's predation? Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Deer are not predators. Opossums are. They eat chickens and chicks. Raccoons are. I don't know about squirrels. I know feral cats are. All the rest of them are predators. And you notice it says including but not limited to. So anyway, this is taking quite a while, and I'm sorry that I'm glad we're finally discussing it. It was a draft and we're discussing it, but let me go back to asking the rest of the board about that section 4, taking out everything except bird feeders as an exception. In other words, people can have bird feeders. And if they don't tidy up under them, it's up to them. Does that sound good? Can we go down to 4, please?
Mike, you have your hand up?
I don't,
Okay, John?
on purpose.
You know, I more than once when I've been at work, working on you know, fixing stuff at restaurants, I have seen raccoons getting into restaurant dumpsters.
Mhm.
Now, what are we going to do? Start fining restaurants because they don't padlock their dumpsters? I just don't see how all this is going to play out. You know, restaurants have been handling their waste in dumpsters since time immemorial. And when they can, raccoons get into it. Heck, I've had them knock over my garbage cans and pull the lids off, even though they're supposed to be raccoon proof. I just think we're using a you know, artillery to instead of a fly swatter here.
Okay, Janet?
So in answer to what John said, Provincetown, I think about 5 years ago, passed a bylaw saying that all commercial dumpsters, including hotels, motels, inns, restaurants, fast food, all have to have dumpsters and empty their trash every night. And that the dumpster has to have a reliable lock or something, because raccoons can open things up. So Provincetown did pass that because they were really having a bad problem.
I can tell you that it's not being enforced very thoroughly.
Yeah, I know. Well, so then that's where we get down to it is who becomes outlaws, and then what police is going to go around knocking on people's doors and inspecting their yards. And I'll also throw it out there, like, how about apple trees and your garden? You know, things eat that stuff. My zucchini gets eaten.
Yeah, I try to keep animals out of my garden with varying degrees of success.
Yeah, there's some, yeah. So I hear I think it's important. I just don't know, you know.
I think the key thing is to really deal with the most egregious aspects of it. You know, the people that are deliberately feeding wildlife,
Yes,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mike.
I think this needs to be simplified, and I agree with John. And basically, I think as far as what prohibitions, I think we should have something really simple, like no person shall intentionally feed coyotes in the town of Wellfleet,
Yeah,
or attempt with a trap.
or foxes or fishers or,
I mean, how big is this problem? Are people feeding foxes and fishers? I mean, people feed foxes, I guess, you know, but like,
Mhm.
Do they?
is
I don't know.
bylaw gonna stop people from like throwing?
I have an answer to that, Ryan.
Yeah, just let him finish, but
I
Yeah.
just think we need to be effective and not just, you know, irritatingly continue to make more and more and more and more rules to the point where like every, you know, every single exception has to be spelled out. I mean, I just think like, how big is the problem, like of
Yeah.
people doing this that's going to be resolved by this? What is the actual meaningful resolution, and how does this bylaw really, you know, get us there? I still think the most important thing we can do is to educate the public on why, you know, feeding wildlife isn't a good idea, and, you know, prohibiting attempting and feeding coyotes is as simple as it has to be.
Helen?
Yeah, I didn't mention yet something that Officer Keogh mentioned today, reminding me. One of the name of this bylaw is wildlife protection. And one of the things that happens when there's an attractant, right? which is the same as directly feeding. If I had a compost bin without a top on it and rat wire over it, it would be an attractant and it would be a problem in my neighborhood. I wouldn't be feeding the rats, but I would be putting food out for them by simply using the compost. But what he said was this thing that is true, which is when you have this kind of situation, as opposed to animals hunting and gathering from the wild to feed themselves, it's a disease center. It's a place where they get exposed to each other in ways that they wouldn't ordinarily living out of the wild, right? And that happens. And he knew more about this than I did. But the reason to have details in here is simply, Janet, you know, it's only when the neighbors mind, only when something bad happens, that it would be then something that could be enforced. Otherwise, unless a neighbor complains, people aren't going to be monitoring this. And it'll give the, you know, unfortunately, regulations and bylaws, you know, laws, statutes are for the people that aren't community minded, Mike, that aren't going to look at, you know, what's posted. And we all know this. And we also know that a lot of the public consists of people who come in here and have very little idea of what's going on in the wild.
So Helen,
I'm done.
so at this point, we need a motion or so that we can move on.
Okay, shall I make a motion?
If you would care to advance one.
Yeah, the motion would be to approve to place as written in this draft that's up on the screen now, this wildlife protection bylaw on the warrant. And then we can do recommendations separately as written. I moved it. Anybody want to second it? You can vote it down.
Well, I'll second it. I'd like to hear from the public too, and nobody, I'm just checking to see if anybody else has their hand raised
No,
in
they
the
don't.
audience, and they don't, so, yeah, I think just let it die here.
Yeah, roll call vote then.
Well, there's no second on the motion. Did I
Oh, I
second
thought you
it?
just seconded it.
I said I would, but I don't really want to, but I'll second it. Okay, I'll second it. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
roll
Uh,
call vote.
Yeah.
Janet, no.
I'm gonna vote no on this.
Michael, no.
Ryan, no.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion fails.
I hope you all talk to the animal control officer.
I would say if you come back to us with a much simpler bylaw that, you know, we might take it up then.
You
So-
talk to him directly. I'm done with it.
Okay, so. All right, next item. Where are we? We are on short-term rentals, first local option for a community impact fee. And this would apply to single-family homes that are rented on a short-term basis where owner owns 2 or more that are both rented on a short-term basis. John?
Yeah, I just want to clarify why I'm recusing myself. I, along with my 2 brothers, inherited a family property some years ago, which is rented out during the summer. And I wish I'd thought of this earlier, but I think it's a clear conflict of interest that I should not be part of this.
Okay.
I'm going to tune myself out here.
Okay. So I would say, are there questions regarding this?
Um,
I I would go, oh, Mike had his
Yep,
hand up
Mike,
first.
sorry, I can't tell because everybody's hands were still raised from the last
Yeah,
time.
yes. I just left mine up because I knew we were going in here. So the 3% is paid by the user again on this, or is it paid by the owner?
It's paid by the user.
So,
Same as the pre-existing room tax.
and this is the one for investor-owned homes. So basically, there would be a 3% additional tax if you booked from a property owner that had multiple properties,
Yes.
but not if you book from another property where there's just one.
Yeah, where there's just one within a town, there is not an additional, yeah, if there's just one that somebody is renting within town, that the 3% doesn't apply to it. If somebody is renting 2 or more, then the 3% would apply.
So I just have a couple issues. Basically, it's not that I am opposed to collecting a community impact fee, but I am a little concerned about the fact that we just raised the tax, doubled the local tax collection to 6% from 3%, right?
From 4 to 6.
Or from four to six. Sorry, I thought it was 3 to 6. 4 to 6, and the tax is already fairly high, and I'm apprehensive to move forward with additional taxes or fees on short-term rentals at the moment, until we kind of see how that plays out with our neighboring towns. I know 3% doesn't seem like much, but when you start adding 3% on to 14%, it creates a number that, you know, I get a little concerned about, one, pricing out this place for people who are barely able to afford a vacation here still, you know. There are still people who come here who've come here every year, and the prices have gone up and the taxes have gone up too. And there's more competition, there's more short-term rentals, and we all know that that's a driver of the housing problem. But to me, I think it's more important for us to look at what we're taking in and see what we can contribute of that to our housing problem. And if we need additional resources in the future, and if everything's working or trending in the same direction, then I'd be more inclined to address, to look at the impact fee again. I just think that, you know, adding, you know, 2% on top and then another 3% right now is a little difficult. And then as far as doing the thing on investor-owned homes, I'm not sure if I agree with the idea of breaking it down on the user, because they have they're not the ones who own the multiple properties. I'd prefer to see it across the board if we did it.
So that's governed by the state statute. This is,
Sure, yeah. I'm not saying it's against the rules. I'm just saying.
no, this is like, you can't, like, the local options are very specific with this language.
Right.
This is not modified language from the state statute, effectively.
No, I know. Isn't there another option?
There's
besides-
two. There's this one, and then there's another one for multifamily homes.
Oh, okay. It's not for just across the board community impact fee.
Yeah,
So there is no option for across the board community impact fee.
no,
Okay, so it's just on the investor owned homes. Okay, I didn't catch that. Okay, well, I've said my piece. I'll let everyone else.
okay. Janet?
Yeah, I would, I know you want to put this on the warrant, and I think it'd be important for everybody to have more time to, not the board, but homeowners to become acquainted with this and just hear what everybody has to say. I get, you know, who wants another tax, but at the same time, the rentals they contribute a big impact on our town, be it renting the houses and not letting lower or summertime summer workers rent it. But there's also, you know, parking, streets, beaches, water. So they do create an impact. So I kind of want to hear from everybody. but I would support putting this on the warrant.
So the intention here is to dedicate all this money to go towards
Housing.
housing.
Yeah,
Which we currently can't do with the existing room tax based on
oh, yeah,
the structure of the town's finances currently. So this is
okay.
one of the few options that we have on the table that we can dedicate a dedicated funding stream towards housing. But Helen?
Yes, a couple things. I wouldn't put it up to 3%. And Ryan, in 1 second, I'm going to ask you for a clarification, just so that we all are absolutely sure that we're on the same page, despite the nice paragraphs that explain the difference between the first option and the second option. But the third article, the third agenda item that we have, there are 3 of them here, says we should dedicate everything to housing.
Yep.
And I really question that, given what I heard and, you know, from particularly the first time it was articulated very clearly in a meeting, something I had been thinking all along by Chief Polly, which is, don't forget.
So I would say that you're
Excuse
going,
me, I'm
Helen,
not
Helen,
done.
you're
I'm
going out of order
addressing-
here.
No, I'm not. I'm addressing what we're talking about, which is the first option. And you do this often, Ryan, and it's tiresome. Sorry,
you-
I'm sorry.
you
That's
are
a
out of order.
I'm sorry I
You're
said it was
talking about the
tiresome.
dedications for
By
the
the way,
CPC.
that was a put down adjective. I apologize. It's not tiresome. I'm having a hard time with it. Okay, here's the point. I don't think we should be saying things like, we know that we're going to dedicate it all to housing. We may do that, but that isn't what we're discussing right now.
Yes.
What we're discussing right now is option 1. And right now, despite your very clear summaries here, would you please lay it out on the table, the difference between the option 1 and the option 2, so that we're looking at them together when we're talking about them?
They have to be treated separately
know
because
that.
that's how the state requires it.
I know that, but right now we're discussing them and there's been a little bit of willingness. I mean, do you want me to do it? I'd rather that you did it.
I mean, we have to keep within the agenda items.
We're
It's-
voting on these
The
in
first
relation
local
to
option
this.
is single-family homes, where owner owns 2 or more, that are rented on a short-term basis. If they own a residence and where they have residency within town, and they own another unit that is rented on a short-term basis, the fee does not apply in that case.
Right.
So I don't see what the confusion here is, that we have to take these separately because that's what the state requires.
But we can't vote for both of them.
No, we can.
To put them
I
on
included
what?
the language from the state for the statutes in the packet.
Yes, but my point is, do we, our board, do we want to put both of them on the warrant? That's the question tonight. Right?
So they're local options and they're different.
Mhm.
So they don't apply twice to the same property either.
No,
So I don't know. Yeah. So is there any other discussion for the first local option?
No,
Okay, so I move to insert an article into the 2022 annual town meeting warrant for the first local option for short-term rental community impact fee on investor-owned homes.
second.
Okay, is there a roll call vote?
John has his hand up.
Yeah, John had recused himself.
Oh,
He just didn't put his hand down from the last one.
Yep. So roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Ryan?
Yep.
Is just to insert, not to recommend.
Yes.
I'll insert it. So, Michael, I.
Brian, I.
oh, nay.
Okay, motion
because of
carries
the
3-1.
3%, Because
So
of the 3%.
Helen, you don't need to explain why you're voting a certain way.
I can though.
So short-term rentals, second local option. This is for multifamily homes where that are rented on a short-term basis. It's very similar to the first local option. And again, yeah, I can also say that right now, Provincetown is also looking at these, both of these. So John?
Area where I would not be in conflict. If we're
Okay.
talking about multifamily homes.
Yep. Okay, so this is for 2 or 3 family dwellings that include the owner's primary residence. And if either of those, if the additional unit is rented on a short-term basis, or the 2 additional units are rented on a short-term basis. Is there any discussion on this one?
Could you give me some examples of this in
So,
town?
So there's actually 242 multifamily houses within Wellfleet currently. And that's not including, and that's excluding mixed use properties as well. So where they might have a commercial space with units above it or stuff. So this is a significant number of properties. We don't know how many of them are actually rented on a short-term basis. But it's, you know,
Okay, I didn't know there were that many. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I mean, we have about 3,500 single family or 3,500 housing units within town. And this is, you know, probably around 500 after you multiply it because they're multifamily.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
John?
Yeah, I live in my home year round, but I have a seasonal rental on the property. Am I included in this, or is this something different?
If it's on the same property, that would be considered a multifamily home.
Oh, all right, then I'm gonna have to recuse again.
Okay. All right, so I move to insert an article in the 2022 annual town meeting warrant for short-term rentals, second local option, community impact fee. General law, chapter 64G, section D, or 3D B.
I got it. Second,
Discussion, please.
Sure.
Okay, so I think that we shouldn't go for the whole 3%. What Mike said earlier is important about the percentage that we just went up. And that's another set of, it's another circumstance, but still. I would say, why don't we have 2%, 1.5%, get some money that way, but not bang it up to 3%. What do we think?
I mean, I kind of agree that we should be incremental in this.
how?
I kind of feel that way about the previous one too.
That's why I voted against it.
Yeah,
Be incremental with the amount you're charging, or
Incremental with the amount of the fee. So we just raised the tax. So if we raise it 1 point, first of all, like there's a couple things. Mr. Chair, do you mind?
Yep.
You know, we're bringing it to town meeting, so it's gonna be up to the voters to vote
Yeah.
for it. But have a hard time recommending a 3% increase in the cost of renting here right now, on top of having just raised the local tax up to 6%. I think that the current amount that it costs, the current fee and the current tax rate total, not just including the towns, I think is around almost 15%, 14 point something.
Yeah,
So when you raise that 3%, you're talking about over a 17, almost 18% tax, or, you know, taxes and fees on top. And I think it's a big jump. To me, it's not incremental enough of an increase. You know, I'm not opposed to it, but I have trouble, you know, the town barely voted to bring this tax in. And it's been great, but I think we need to be careful about how much we, you know, tax all at once.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, we all know that short-term rentals are one of the primary drivers for the unaffordability of housing within Wellfleet.
Well, can I agree with you on that?
Yep.
But and also just say that, you know, the 3% is not gonna solve, it's not gonna stop people from doing short-term rentals, because it's on the user. But it may price some people out of coming and staying in the cottage or little, you know, somewhat affordable rental that they come to. Or maybe not price them out, but make them decide not to come to Wellfleet, you know? So I don't really know. I just think that when it comes to taxes, that it's better not to raise them dramatically.
Janet?
can we do something like prorated, that if you're renting something for like 5,000 a week, that it would be 3%, but if you're
No.
renting no, we can't do, I didn't think we could, yeah, all
No.
right.
That's governed by
Alright.
state statute, so.
Yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
I mean, I would be in support of, I wouldn't vote to recommend the other one because of the 3%, but if it were 1%, I would vote to recommend that right now, and that would sort of put it on the table. And then if it needed to be raised in the future, it could be raised.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Move it forward.
I mean,
think-
Hear
I
from-
can live with 1% just to get it on the books. You know, I do think that when we have opportunities for revenue streams that we can dedicate to housing, we should really be trying to take advantage of them. So, but Helen?
Yeah, so let's do a motion with 1%. We need to, you know, rescind the last one, I guess. Oh, no, we didn't vote on the last one.
No, we voted to insert it, but we can still edit it when we review the.
Yeah.
So let's vote on the 1% tonight to at least get that settled in language. So it can be, you know, put into the warrant for the next one. Can somebody make a motion? I can't do it right now.
I move to insert the article on short-term rental community impact fee for not investor-owned homes. What is it?
It's a second local option.
The second local option, amending the tax to a 1% fee. Sorry, not the tax, the fee to 1%.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion
Um,
carries.
Can
Yep.
can I make another motion to amend
Yes,
the
go
previous
ahead.
1%?
Yep.
I move to rescind the vote to insert the first local option into the warrant and amend it to also reflect a 1% fee, then reinsert it into the warrant.
We got to do two motions, Mike.
Yeah,
I guess so. I don't think we
Okay,
have-
Helen second rescind motion.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
I move to insert the local option 1 for the community impact fee, amending the fee rate to 1%.
Second,
Roll call vote, sorry.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. So on to item E. The town meeting article for the use of the short-term rental. Well, it's for the short-term rental community impact fees, not the the standard room tax, just for clarification. This would dedicate, or as proposed, it would dedicate 35% to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust to be used exclusively for the purpose of affordable housing, 45% to also be allocated to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. That does not necessarily have to be used exclusively for affordable housing, so they could have, different AMIs. And
What's
then
AMI?
what?
What's AMI?
Median income,
Yeah.
Adjusted median income
Right.
area.
Yeah, area.
area? Okay.
Yeah.
Median income.
And then I'm also proposing 20% to be allocated to a housing stabilization fund. I don't know, maybe we should take the housing stabilization fund first, if that would make more sense. to
I
people.
think, so, I've always, I like this actually the way it is. I don't think we need to separate them. I think you want to take each percentage and go over it, or just,
So the state statute requires that 35% of the receipts collected from these community impact fees to be used exclusively for either capital improvement or infrastructure projects or affordable housing. And as I've said, the more money that we can dedicate to housing, the better. And right now, this income stream is not allocated. So, and we can dedicate all of it to basically be used for housing. So,
why do you want to change the housing stabilization fund? I think
no,
that's,
it would be create one.
to create a stabilization fund.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
should we take the housing stabilization fund first before we discuss the disbursement?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, that's item G. I think I need a motion, so I move to take the housing stabilization fund out of order.
Helen second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Ryan, I. Okay, so the idea behind creating a housing stabilization fund is that there are other housing groups within the town of Wellfleet that might need support at some point for different items. For instance, making a housing production plan, or there's various studies. We have the local housing partnership, the housing authority. In addition to the housing trust, I also wanted to have something that allows town meeting to kind of buy in and make some decisions on the behalf of the town, because I think that is important, for the voters to be able to have some say in the housing plans as well,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And
Yes.
again, the wealthy or the housing trust could also, you know, receive money from it. It would just take a town meeting vote to receive it. So it just provides an additional layer of flexibility. That's the idea behind the stabilization fund. John? John, you have your hand up?
I did.
Yeah. Sorry.
Unintentionally.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah. Funds are funny. They encumber money. In other words, that's the good news and the bad news. One of the good things about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I think that's what it's called,
Trust.
is that we've talked about it. It's very well, shall we say, set up. I mean, you think the animal control bylaw had, I mean, the wildlife protection thing had details. It's got a lot of details and there's a lot of protection in it. And there are a lot of people on it. Mike's one of them. I'm not sure that we need this. And the only reason that I don't think we should do it is because of what I just said. It takes money and it holds it and doesn't allow there to be a way to pull it into another area of the budget. Doesn't just go into the general fund. That as much as we need housing and we need to fund housing, which is what the trust was set up for, we also have to recognize, and this year more than a whole lot of other years, that we get these really bad moments where we need our cash to be more liquid. I don't know if that's quite the right way to put it, but I would like there to be more flexibility in creating yet another fund which holds off a bunch of money. I don't think is practical at this point, much as I support housing. Thank you. It's good to
Mike?
know about,
Yeah,
though.
so, what about the concept of a housing fund, housing stabilization fund?
That's what I'm talking about.
I
don't
think you're talking about the disbursements of the monies themselves.
No, I'm talking about the creation of the fund, and I thought I was just very clear about it. In other
Mike?
words, I don't think it should even exist. I think the housing trust bank account, if you will, is enough about that. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Helen in a way, because I think that part of the benefit of the Affordable Housing Trust is that it's not tied to AMI. Well, it's, it's got a broad range of AMIs that it can serve, but also that it can be utilized rather quickly, for purchase of land, different types of housing opportunities, and having to wait until town meeting. The flexibility that's enabled by the trust is, I think, lends it to be a better vehicle to use in sort of emergency housing situations or housing situations in general. So I tend to feel like, and I am a member of that trust, that having the funding go directly into the Affordable Housing Trust, which actually does fund the other groups. I mean, the other groups, the Affordable Housing Trust will be the mechanism with which other groups get funding to do projects. So, and I don't know if that's totally clear. And we've sort of been going through a process with the Housing Authority and the Community Housing Partnership to establish the roles of each group, and that the trust would be sort of the funding mechanism for these other groups. So I think what we have actually, if we didn't have an affordable housing trust and it wasn't set up the way it is, then I think a stabilization fund would be a good mechanism to start doing that. I mean, prior to this, we had the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which essentially was a sort of stabilization fund, but didn't need to go to town meeting for everything. And that fund has been moved over to the trust. So I think that, you know, as far as having a mechanism that the trust is already that. I don't know if there's something I'm missing or if you feel differently about it. You know,
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm proposing it, the vast majority of the funds would go to the housing trust automatically. But the housing stabilization fund is, because I still wanted town meeting to have some funds that they could disperse on the behalf of the town for this use. If that makes sense. I do believe in,
I think that makes sense. I just think that, you know, inevitably there's going to be large housing projects that require borrowing authorizations and authorizations to utilize property that the, you know, that would go to town meeting. But I think it does encumber the money. And with housing, we're obviously in a housing emergency. I think having that money available, to me, it takes priority.
Okay.
You know,
John.
I tend to agree with Mike on that. You know, I would hate to do anything to in any way slow down or derail you know, our affordable housing efforts.
Okay, Janet.
So I agree with what everyone has said. I also know that this has been discussed and wanted for a number of years. And again, I think I'd love to hear what other, you know, if for some reason, a lot of people are not on this meeting. And we haven't heard from them, but, you know, I'd like to hear from more housing people. I'd like to hear from the finance committee and even, you know, our town manager and other people get other inputs, because I know that people have wanted a stabilization fund for years. They recommend it. So I mean, we could move to put this on, to insert this into the warrant. Yeah,
So how about this? So we can move to insert it, but without any funding dedicated to it. That creates a fund. So if at a later date, you know, another board wants to utilize it, they can. I don't know, but that, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
Like, before I feel comfortable voting on this, I'd just like to send this out to the Housing Authority and the trust and
yeah.
and Community Housing Partnership to see if it's something that they feel like is necessary given the mechanism that we have, and whether, you know, the housing boards and committees, you know, want it, you know, because first and foremost, I think this is to benefit our housing problem. So I'd like to do that and bring it back up if that's okay.
Okay, John, do you have your hand up or?
Oh, but
Sorry,
for some reason it's still up here. I'll take it
Yeah.
down.
Helen?
Yeah, hi. We have a healthy flow of cash always coming from the community preservation funds. And we have, as we've brought up a couple of times already, the trust. And if we create this fund, it can just sit there, right, with nothing in it. We have some funds like that right now. With an, you know, it's like an empty bank account that still exists, okay? But I really don't think we need it. And I think that at any point, I would not want to have a chunk of change encumbered in that way which is the first thing I said, and I'm saying it again at the end. So I would not be in favor of creating it, Ryan, for only that reason. However, I do appreciate it being brought up and considered because it is an option. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess with that, I move to table the Housing Stabilization Fund.
Helen, second.
Roll
Janet,
call vote.
I. Janet, I.
Michael,
Aye.
I.
And I,
Ryan, no.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-1. And then community impact fee receipt. So this is going back to item G. The proposal is, well, I guess it would be amended now, where 35% would be allocated to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust to be used exclusively for affordable housing. And rather than 45%, it should read 65% shall be allocated to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. And that's basically it.
What's the, sorry, did I missed what the other, where the other percentage goes?
35% goes to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust, be used exclusively for the purposes of affordable housing. Because the state requires that 35% either be used for.
Okay, for capital A.
affordable- Yep,
Okay, and then the other percentage would just be unencumbered funds.
yes,
Okay,
if that's clear.
yep.
So discussion, Mike, do you have your hand up?
I do not, I would support this.
Okay, Helen,
I care about housing, but I would not support the percentages. I think we should just go with the state's language, not designate percentages. Given that we have from year to year different needs, okay? So we need help for the housing. Yes, we do. But this year was a very good example, even though it wasn't a normal year. There have been other years in my experience where having a more liquid way to move the cash around within the budget has been essential.
I
And
would
with
say,
that, hold on, we want everything, we want to do everything we can to avoid overrides. And if
So-
we have this bit of money coming in, one year we could use it for more for infrastructure, another year we could use it all for housing. But to have it be on a case-by-case basis, year by year, according to what the town's needs are, because when taxes go up, it affects everybody. It affects landlords who then raise the rents on their tenants and so on and so forth. It isn't just property owners. Thank you.
so I would say that, there is, I mean, not dedicating these funds to housing would be a mistake. The idea of moving funds around like has been done in the past should raise everybody's eyebrows because, Wellfleet has not managed its finances well for an extended period of time. And we're just in the process of digging the town out of the situation that was created by the ideas of how the town was managing the funds were acceptable in some shape or form. There is also a movement out there that is in the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust requested that 80% of the room rental receipts be dedicated to them. This is something that we can provide now. It's a revenue source that is not being collected. So it is currently unencumbered in its entirety, except for as encumbered by the state. And to not dedicate it to housing would be a grave mistake, in my opinion. But Mike?
Yeah, I agree. And, honestly, there are very few funding mechanisms for housing, particularly when you get outside of capital A affordable housing. There's basically zero, but the charitable donations of a few, even CPA funds, have to be used for capital A affordable housing. I'm in support of the request of the trust to receive a large percentage of the actual short-term rental tax funds on a yearly basis. There are funds for other infrastructure. The town's problem has been doing everything in its power to avoid overrides for years and using single one-time revenue sources to shift money around year in and year out has sort of delayed the inevitable and put us in a pretty bad situation. So short-term rentals are the #1 driver of the housing crisis, and therefore that money that's received by the town should be used to offset the cost of the housing increases and the housing shortage that we're experiencing. So 1% isn't nearly enough. It's not nearly enough. And if we want to have a community in the future and not just be a resort, and if we want to have employees to work for our businesses and restaurants to be open 7 days a week and stores to be able to operate, if we want to have people who work for the town of Wellfleet, we have no choice but to dedicate a substantial amount of our short-term rental tax money to offset the problem that it causes. It's exactly what it should be used for. And, you know, there's water protection money for people who want to get water and sewerage infrastructure money that's available. Otherwise, we have one of the lowest property tax rates in the state of Massachusetts, actually. I think we're number 12 right now, out of all municipalities in the state of Massachusetts. I could be wrong about that number. They change year in and year out about the rate and the value. But, you know, we really need to resolve this problem, or we're going to be, you know, we're going to be without all the things that I mentioned. And I don't think we can exist as a community anymore if we can't resolve some of this housing problem.
Okay.
It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money.
John?
It not only raised my eyebrows, it raised my hand. I agree 100%. We got into trouble by moving stuff around, not so much by avoiding overrides, but by not following proper procedures and ending up shuffling funds all over the place. We cannot afford to derail our affordable housing program. There's always going to be a reason to do it. You know, if we look for a reason to do it. So let's keep it on track.
Yeah, and I would say that before I get to you, Helen, that I do think it is important to dedicate it when we actually enact it, because as we know what happened with the room rental or the rooms tax is there were, you know, it wasn't just the housing trust that would have liked to have a portion of the receipts dedicated to them from the get-go. There was a couple others as well. But not doing that basically put the monies into the general budget and, you know, and then committed them effectively without having a policy decision.
Could I add to what I said?
Yep.
We are, as I pointed out at our last meeting, there is no guarantee we're going to get an override. And whether we do or not, we have to keep our affordable housing program on track. And I really think we should dedicate this to that.
Okay. Helen?
Well, I think we're doing that, and I think we all care about that, and we understand why. However, there's something else happening even as we meet, which is many properties in Wellfleet have sold for a whole lot more than they were 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We all know about that. And that excludes people from buying them, but it does something else. When they sell for those large amounts of money, you do know that it can raise the taxes of the neighbors. This happens. And taxes are going to be going up for people because of that.
So I would just say that we have no control over that. We
Now,
do
hold
not
on,
have,
let me finish.
it's not
point
really
is-
relevant to what we're
In your
discussing.
opinion, why don't you let me finish, and please stop doing that. What we have to do is keep our eyes on the prize. as Mike said, we have comparatively lower taxes than a lot of other municipalities. But we have to remember that there are people here for whom a higher tax bill makes a big difference. And not try to simply address that by providing housing and opportunities that will unfortunately be limited in terms of who they can supply, because we're not building housing projects outside New York City. And I'm very aware of that. And I am a housing person and have been since I started, almost since I began doing this 22 and a half years ago. So we have to keep our eyes on all the costs that all the people have put on them by very basic things that we need to keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so Charlie, so correct me if I say anything that is not quite right. So Proposition 2.5 only allows that the budget increase or the levy increase by 2.5% plus new growth per year. That does not reflect the increase in home values. It just reflects what the levy is. This year, the tax rate per thousand actually decreased from last year's because the appreciation of the houses within Wellfleet was so high that I think it dropped by over 10 cents per thousand. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know what it went down, but yes, you've hit it entirely correct.
Okay, so just because the property values are increasing does not mean that the people's individual tax bills are increasing along with the value of the property. Just to be clear on that. Mike?
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing because a lot of people get confused about property value and 2.5%. It's not on the value of the property, it's on the levy on the town, just like Ryan said. So the 2.5% increase is on the total amount received by the town, plus new construction that wasn't included before. But it does not, when the property value goes up, it does not increase. That's not what increases your tax rate. We have a 2.5% tax increase every year. And to counter something that John said a little bit is that, we avoided doing an override in the past, despite the fact that our costs were increasing at a number larger than 2.5% on an annual basis, year in and year out. And in order to chase that, rather than any type of override, what we were doing was robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking new monies, putting them wherever we could to stopgap that measure until things fell out a little bit. And then all of a sudden we have a deficit because we're not funding our operating budget with our property tax revenue because it's outgrown it. The cost of just alone pensions, health insurance, benefits, wages, union contracts is above 2.5% a year. So, we've kept our property tax low and that's great, but at a cost. And this is what we're seeing now is years of using single source revenues to stopgap the necessary expenditures that the town has had with single source one-time revenues.
Okay, I'm gonna go Helen and then John, and then I'm gonna make a motion so that we can move on. So
Thank
Helen?
you. Yeah, thank you. You're both absolutely right, Mike and Ryan. I was referring to something different, which is if, for example, and I know of two very concrete instances of this, somebody next to you takes an undeveloped lot and builds on, $1 million house on it, or in one extraordinary situation, there was a shack, it was torn down, something else was put up that cost a lot of money and was quite different. And the neighbor had their tax bill go up by many thousands of dollars simply because this property next to them, and you know how that works. It's the houses that are near you in the neighborhood. The tax rate is partly set by that. That is happening more and more here, for better or worse. There's some houses in town that have been fixed up. It's nice to see them not falling apart. But that affects people, and that's part of the whole housing dilemma. And I'm just saying, let's keep the taxes as low as possible in whatever way. And thank you, Mike, for that excellent description of the fact that our Prop 2.5 can't keep up with what's going on otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, John?
I don't want to get into a discussion or argument about how the town got to where it is financially. Let's just stick with the issue at hand, which is where to put this money. And I'm ready to vote on it if everyone else is.
Okay, so with that, I move to insert, do we want a recommendation as well? Are we comfortable voting on that?
What do you mean a recommendation?
Okay, so I move to insert and recommend an article governing the use of short-term rental community impact fees as drafted with the following amendments. Where it says, starting from where it reads 35%, it should read 35% shall be allocated to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust to be used exclusively for the purpose of affordable housing, and 65% shall be allocated to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust, and strike out everything after 20%, or starting at the comma with 20%.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
No, I have to say one thing. I would vote to put it on the warrant. I would not vote to recommend it. So by doing that, I'm going to have to vote against it, which I regret because I would like it on the warrant.
We can
Okay.
separate the votes.
Roll call vote, please.
Michael, aye.
Aye.
So Janet, nay, and it's because I agree with Helen that we should put it on and hear from other committees and departments.
Mr. Chair, can we
Yep.
just vote to insert it?
Okay, and make the
yeah.
recommendation separate.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
please.
Okay.
Okay.
We can recommend it with the other articles when we do
Yep.
that.
So I move to insert an article governing the use of short-term rental community impact fees as amended.
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
And Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. But we do need to start making recommendations on articles, just so that everybody knows.
Yeah. We also need to get everybody's input. We haven't had input from anyone. I mean, usually we've had every department, every committee come before us and give them, and we discuss it. And then they give us their recommendations. So
Yeah, I would just, we need to keep moving
do,
on for
yeah.
tonight.
Fine.
At this point, we're on to item H, radioactive water release resolution. So I'd actually like to retract this one. There's a good citizen petitioned article that does a lot of the writing as well. So I'd like to just use the citizen petitioned article. Are we comfortable voting on the recommendation for that tonight or not?
Can I wanted to address that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's the most efficient thing with recommendations, and it's easier on staff and drafting, is we do all the inserting discussion, which is a whole big separate thing, and then we do all the recommendations at the same time.
Okay, so
You know,
true.
so we'll
Yeah.
just move on from that one and take no action on it and just, yeah. So then radioactive water release legal contingency fund. So this proposal is to basically increase the town council budget by $30,000. In the case that the town would have to take legal action related to the, proposed radioactive water release by Holtec in relation to the Pilgrim Power Plant. Is there any discussion? Helen?
Yeah, I, for the same reasons I said before, I don't think we should encumber this. I don't think we should create a fund for it. I think we should absolutely stand up and scream and use town council if we need to, but not to set aside money just for that. Thank you. Especially not that much money. Thank you.
Is there other discussion?
Yeah, I feel like at this time with our budget and with everything, I'm certainly for this. However, I don't feel like I want to vote on extending money or
Yeah,
that
it
much
would-
money for that. So
It would
we'll-
only be expended if it was used.
True.
If the town does take legal action, it's going to be expensive one way or the other.
Yeah,
And that could deplete the town council budget that we budget for to run,
Yeah.
the commonplace items on a day-to-day basis for the town. So the proposal is just, to appropriate, $30,000 exclusive, to as a legal contingency fund for, to if there's an issue, and it could be expended immediately. It wouldn't need a town meeting vote to be expended, because it would be the allowed use for the money. John?
The event that litigation proved to not be necessary, what would happen to that money?
I will go to free cash. So, it would default to free cash. So Helen?
Yeah, Ryan, we don't know when the stuff is going to hit the fan with this. And A, it might turn into a class action suit. But B, this is going to be a long story unfolding. And C, hate to say it, but the select board has spent that kind of money in the past on council. And I'm thinking of a number of situations that went on and on that was even more than that without asking town meeting. And we should be careful about that. But I have to say that let's wait and see if we need to do it, because we've got our legislators absolutely beating the war drum around us and being very proactive about it, even though it's a federal decision. Okay.
So I would say that if Holtec had proceeded as they had planned, there would have been only months. There was not enough time to effectively call a town meeting to act on this.
We don't need town meeting to spend council money, unfortunately.
All right, Mike?
I think, I like the idea and the posture, and I think if everyone in town understood that the funds would only be expended if we needed to take legal action, I do agree with Helen that we can just, if we have to take legal action, we have that flexibility to do that. Although I do kind of like the posture of raising it and saying, hey, we're prepared to take legal action. Although I think at this point with our budget problems, appropriating funding that we might not use, even though it doesn't get spent, I think in the minds of taxpayers, anything we kind of add on to that is just perceived to raise our current deficit. So I'm a little apprehensive about it because I think that if we had our back against the wall, we'd be able to just utilize town council regardless. So
I would say that, it's ultimately up to town meeting. They could vote to approve or not approve it.
sure.
If we're concerned about what townspeople might think, that's the best way to find out. So Helen?
We've got this petitioned article, but I don't know one person in this town that I've heard from or read about that thinks that what Holtec was thinking of is a good idea. And I'm going to say it again, the big guys, men and women in our legislature don't think it's a good idea. And the people in Washington that represent us, including, when I say legislators, I am including them, don't think it's a good idea and are very worried about it. It's not like, oh yeah, we don't like it. It's like people are really, really angry and upset. And I do understand your concern, but I think that particularly this petitioned article gives one some sense and would give our legislators a clear indication of the fact that we don't want this at all. And the town, that our taxpayers would be behind us using counsel judiciously if we even needed to. Because I'm going to say this, I think it's going to be much bigger than just one town. And we've, written our letter and so on and so forth.
So I'd just like to make a motion. So I move to insert an article for radioactive water release legal contingency fund and make no recommendation at this time.
Helen, second for the sake of voting.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Someone else go first.
Michael, no.
I'm gonna vote yay and let the voters decide.
Ryan, I think, finding out what the voters think is, let them,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Okay, I,
Helen,
No, Mike comes next.
Mike
I
voted.
already voted.
Oh God, guys, don't screw me up with the order. I'm not smart enough. Helen, no, because of what I said. The
Okay,
voters
motion
already
carries
voted.
3-2. Annual town meeting warrant review. Charlie. And just so I know I sent out an email last week. At 8:40, wherever we are, we will wrap up and then move on to the regular closing because I want to be done by 9 tonight, one way or the other. All right.
how about being
Ryan?
done by 8? What are we on?
Brian,
Yep.
in connection with this, is there a way to formally notify other town departments that we would, appreciate recommendations so that we can get on with those?
The departments don't make recommendations, committees do. Charlie, why don't you, where do you want to start on the warrant?
I'm looking right now. Why don't we go to article number 2?
Okay. Budgetary transfers.
Yeah. So do you want me just to briefly comment on it, Ryan?
Sure.
So anyway, I have listed here several deficiencies in budgets that total at the moment $201,733. There's a question mark next to the fire department expenses for lodging, and Chief's going to get that to me in the probably by the middle of next week. Now, it's a lot of money, but these are just all significant shortfalls that we have in the budget. Obviously it was put together in a really tight fashion. Now, I guess the question you would ask me is, where does it come from? And if you look, I have a column on the left there. And one of the nice mistakes that happened at the 2021 annual town meeting is we budgeted for the NASA debt twice, and then we budgeted for the county assessment twice. So anyway, we have some over appropriations that will cover these deficiencies, so that's a good thing.
Where are we?
Oh, Article number 2, sorry.
Article Number 2 on the warrant.
Oh,
Or
okay.
I can, here, how about this? It kind
Fine,
of
I
makes it
got it.
harder for me.
Good.
But
I don't know, do you act on these item by item or as a whole? I don't know. Your practice.
item by item typically.
Yeah,
so-
that makes sense, yeah.
So I move to insert and recommend Article 20 or Article 2 fiscal year 2022 budgetary transfers.
Ellen second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, but I have a quick question.
Yep.
The question mark here with the fire department expense lodging, are we gonna have to re-vote on it when we add that number in anyway?
Charlie?
Yeah, yep, you'd have to amend it.
Okay,
Okay,
So-
so I guess I'll just put I and we'll amend it in the future.
yep. Ryan, I.
Oh, Helen, I, sorry.
Janet, did you vote?
Yes, I voted aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Article number 3, Ryan,
Yep.
is what I'd like to move to next. if
Yep.
that's okay. So once again, these are all bills that have come in from a prior fiscal year after June 30th. There's a lot of them, frankly, but it makes sense because we had so much disruption in the town accountant's office. But these are all obligations the town owes.
All right, make it smaller because it's on 2 pages.
So, do you want me to make a motion?
Helen has her hand up.
Yeah,
Helen?
sorry,
Okay.
there was one item on here. What is Terminix commercial?
I think that was
Ants.
I think that was an invoice from DPW from the landfill area, or the transfer station.
Okay, it's not a pesticide application, right?
I don't know. I'll have to double check, but it's a bill that's been services provided in due.
I know it's tiny, but we can't do that on town property. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So I move to insert and recommend Article 3, prior year invoices.
Ellen second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay. Charlie?
Do you want it, the capital budget's big. Do you want to skip that for now and try to deal with some of the simple stuff?
Yeah, because I think you were looking to see if any of them could be removed. Right.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that philosophically, but we could do that at sometime soon.
Okay. So what would be the next article?
I think we would then be jumping to article, well, do you want to look at article number 12 for a moment?
Yep.
That is the, oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Right, maybe we should look at the collective bargaining ones just to insert.
Okay,
I'm sorry. So that would be
there's a bunch of them.
No. number 7, I believe.
7,
Great.
8, 9,
Yeah. there's a
10,
bunch.
11, no.
I would only say that we have 4 collective bargaining units that expire on June 30th, 2022. And I haven't started negotiations yet, but it's sort of on my to-do list next. But anyway, I don't have settlements, but I think we need them in the warrant, so I think we should vote to insert them.
I
Okay,
move to insert articles 8, 9,
7.
7, 8, 9, and 10 into the warrant.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John,
Mike.
aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Yeah, we should do the same for 11.
Yep, non-union. Okay, I move to insert article number 11, non-union and other personnel salaries and compensation.
Helen,
Second.
second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Can we make a motion and recommend? We typically do for this one,
Sure.
You mean for 10 or 11?
for 11.
11.
Yeah,
Well, we don't, okay.
it's just our recommendation.
Yeah, it's usually not itemized.
Right, yes.
So I move to recommend Article 11,
Helen.
non-union and other personnel salaries and compensation.
Helen, second.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, Article 12, OPEB.
Yeah, once again, this is part of that $1,359,000, shortfall that I have in warrant articles and projects, but I was trying to get back in the practice of appropriating money to the town's OPEB account. So you definitely want to insert it. You might,
Yeah.
whether you're ready to vote on it, I don't know.
Yeah, I would do both. We just took it out last year because of everything.
Yeah,
But with the understanding it was a one-time thing.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'll have to wait on recommendation, even though I would recommend it. Shall I make a motion? I
Sure.
move that we insert Article number 12, other post-employment benefits, OPEB appropriation.
Second,
Second. Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I,
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, do you want to make the second motion, recommend?
No,
Okay, I move to recommend Article number 12, other post-employment benefits, OPEB appropriation.
I just did
Second.
that.
No, you move to insert.
Oh, I see.
Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I,
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Just to recommend, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is
I
to
thought we were
recommend.
going to do the recommendations all in one swell.
No,
swoop.
we've already made some of the recommendations.
Well,
Helen.
I would prefer to withhold recommendation on this right now.
Yes,
I just need to see the entirety of our capital expenditures and whether it makes sense to do this year or not.
yeah, and
I think it
Fine.
does, but I need to have the whole context before I recommend it.
Brian,
Helen?
as I said before, it becomes a drafting nightmare to keep track of which ones we recommended and which ones we
Yep,
didn't.
so we've already recommended some of the articles, Helen.
I know, but
And
let's stop. for
Charlie
now.
is keeping track of it.
Mhm. Well, it's hard to do.
Charlie,
to
can you
keep
keep
doing
up with us?
yeah, I'm going to put these right in the draft warrant, so you'll
Yeah.
see it at the next meeting.
Yeah, and it reduces our workload in the future.
Yeah. So I will abstain from recommendation if you guys are going to take a vote on it right now.
Okay.
I don't
Uh,
want to vote
Did
on it
did we
now.
make the motion? We
I
made
made the
yeah.
motion.
And the
I made-
second,
I don't know if
Just-
it was seconded. I can't
I'll,
remember.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote.
And Janet, I.
John, I,
Ryan, I.
I go,
Helen,
Okay, motion carries 3-0 with 2 abstentions.
No, yeah, I didn't, yeah, 2 abstentions.
Okay, Charlie?
13 is stabilization fund. It's only going to be if we have free cash, frankly. So
So should we move on this or not?
I think we should insert it at the moment.
Yeah,
Okay, I move to insert Article 13, transfer to stabilization fund.
Helen, second.
second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
I,
Ryan, I. Sorry, Mike.
Michael, I.
Helen, I.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, Charlie?
Do you going to bring in the police chief and the fire chief on 14 and 15 and 16?
They're here.
Oh, nice.
So
Sorry.
I know that we haven't really reviewed their budgets yet. But Chief Hurley, Police Department, new staff.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, over the past 2 to 3 years, you've heard discussions on the elimination of our reserve summer program. And now with the police reform bill that has become official, so we are slowly winding down that program to the point where we're at the moment just left with one summer officer going into this upcoming summer. So to deal with this and being short this staff now, especially during our shoulder and summer seasons, I've exhausted other methods. One was to utilize funding that was in my special reserve line. And now we've got to a point where to finish up staffing to deal with the elimination of the summer reserve program, that I'd be asking for 2 new additional positions on the override coming up at this town meeting.
Okay, Mike?
Chief, is it all of your summer officers? You can't have any summer officers anymore? Or is it, is that bicycle officers and everything?
Yeah, anybody that's sworn, so any reserve summer staff that went through the Reserve Academy and had powers of arrest, the community service officer, which is a civilian position, if we can still find somebody, we will utilize that downtown, but that is not a sworn position.
Yeah, and for the audience, how many people did you used to have at the height of summer in those roles?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, up to 10, and then it kind of dwindled between 8 and 10, and we've been bouncing between 6 and 8, probably the past 5 to 6 years. So I just got off a FinCom meeting a few minutes ago, and really, during my 25 plus year tenure, it's been a phenomenal program, a very cost-effective program. I mean, to be able to carry 6 to 8 to 10, full-time staff members during the summer at a, $15, $16 an hour, which is the equivalency of about 2 full-time positions. And it's a real blow to departments like ours in Provincetown and Eastham, but, we have to deal with it. And, to look at when these people would even be trained and in the field, as I pointed out in memos over the past year, that, these officers won't even be in the field until probably the fall of 2023. So it's not going to solve our problem for this summer, and depending on hiring an academy, if it'll even help for next summer. But, I really think doing due diligence that we really need to shore up a little bit of staffing to deal with the loss of this personnel.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then is there additional police hirings in the future planned?
No, this to me, I think would get us to a point where we can continue to address the issues that we're dealing with now. Again, this is a new area we're kind of wandering into, but I feel comfortable to get the staffing up to this level that we should be in good shape.
Okay. I am kind of concerned that townspeople might have issues. Mike?
Can we hire any more civilian without arresting authority to help with departmental stuff that, no, I'm not saying that I don't agree with this, but we just know the summer is so busy. I'm concerned that having only 2 when we normally have 6 to 8 in our summertime that are sworn officers is going to be enough staff for the department in the summer.
Well, to be honest with you, last summer, we only had 1 application for the community service officer. It's,
Yeah.
as I explained to the FinCom, this profession is going under major change, and one is recruitment, and retention. It's at a, the most critical point I've ever seen it at in my career.
Helen?
I fully understand, Curly, about your need for this, and I support it. But what I'm worried about is going for two and having town meeting decide they don't want to do that. Would it be more prudent to be able to say on town meeting floor, we need two? We had originally, we're going to ask for two, but we understand that the voters may not want that, and to have just ask for one this year and another one next year. It's just my thought, because the way this is worded, if it goes down because there are two and that much more money spent, you wouldn't have anything. And
Well,
I've been hearing that people are very concerned about this stuff. So I want you to get something, you know? What do you think?
no, and I completely understand. I mean, obviously, myself and the lieutenant have spoken about this. I mean, I have been trying to be prudent the past few years by utilizing existing funding and stretching out the summer officers as long as I could. I kind of went down this road a few years ago of, okay, I'll turn one car back in and we'll vote the car, and lost on that end. And it ended up being, here we are 3 years later, I don't have police vehicles. I mean, I completely understand the taxpayers' concerns. All I can do is bring forward a prudent plan to move forward with this, and some quality of life services with beach issues and parking, and some things may not be addressed at times. I mean, I don't know what else. I could only deal with so much with so many people, the bottom line. And it just seems like this job continues to become more complicated. Calls have become more complicated, and we're just, to have two police officers only on the road during the summertime is, it's not good. I mean, but we've dealt with it and offset it with the summer staff. And the other problem by offsetting 1 and 1 is that now you're looking at not having one of those staff members on board till 2024. I mean, it continues to push the problem out, but I understand the board and the community's consideration on it and the concern.
Okay, Mike,
I'm in support of putting this on with the two officers. I think clearly my preference would be that the state would have allowed us to continue what we were doing, because obviously, February is not the same as August and our staffing levels change, but we clearly need the officers that we have in the summer, and to be short all those officers and then go into multiple summers of having, not enough. They're not only our law enforcement, they're our first responders a lot of times too. So as much as I in the past have advocated for having summer staff and not hiring too many full-time year-round officers, I think we're at a juncture here where we need to put this on here, and we can read the tea leaves. And if it's going that way at town meeting, somebody can make a motion to amend to hire one officer, I believe, on town meeting floor. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that, I think this is what we need to do. And I don't want to say that, and it goes against sort of what I've thought in the past, but we had our seasonal officer program in the past. We don't have that anymore.
okay. Would you care to advance motion?
Yeah, I move to insert article number 14, police department new staff, into the warrant.
Ellen, second?
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Do you want to make a motion on a recommendation?
Can we haul the recommendations?
No, Helen, we've
What does the
already.
rest of the board want to do? Through you, what does the rest of the board want to do about recommendations?
Well,
I think it's fine to do place and recommend tonight. And it might be a typing nightmare, but it isn't that hard. And we really need to keep moving. It's middle of February, We've got like 6 weeks.
Just thinking about staff.
I know. Well, think about staff in a lot of other ways too. That makes it easier. But yeah.
Mike,
I mean, I don't really care. I'd probably vote to recommend this either way. I just know when we make a lot of recommendations, last year when we had fiscal problems, then we had to kind of go back through and start taking a paring knife to the warrant. We had to go back and amend a lot of our recommendations, and that wasn't very much fun either. So, I think with large expenditures, I'd like to see the big picture, but I think I'm going to vote to recommend this anyways. So I don't really care.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think that we need to get as much work as we can done. Going over the same articles multiple times is, yeah. So I guess I move to recommend Article number 14, Police Department new staff.
second. Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
I'm gonna abstain.
You are.
Yeah, I'm not,
Okay,
Okay.
Helen, I. Given,
Okay.
given that we can, it can be amended on town meeting floor for less if it looks like it's going south.
okay, motion carries 4-0 with one abstention. I'm assuming fire department next, right, Charlie?
Yes,
Okay. Hi, Chief Polly. How are you today?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see everyone.
So you went to the finance committee meeting as well?
Yep, both Chief Frilly and I have been back and forth with dueling screens here.
Okay. Why don't you, do a quick presentation?
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record after all these years, but the message hasn't changed. The message has been very consistent. We really need to have 4 more full-time positions. That would allow us to have a total of 5 on shift, remembering that we have 4 shifts, staffed 24/7. So this is my attempt to get 2 positions in this budget, upcoming budget, I should say, FY23, and then go for the other 2 final positions for FY24. And anticipation, I've looked at this 6 ways to Sunday, and I can understand Helen's concerns about maybe we should just try one, and might be a little bit more palatable, to the taxpayers. And I'm fully aware of that. It's just that we've come almost, back to home plate with this. And yes, this is going to be a tough year, but the problems are not going away. I did a quick number calculation, and our call volume for last year was up 21% over the year before. So we're running both ambulances with minimum staffing the best we can. But bottom line is we need 4 more positions, and I'd really prefer to try to make the pitch and get 2 this year and 2 in 24.
Okay, how many on-call staff are we down to?
Right now we have 4. We'll be down to no more than 3 on July 1, to my best of my understanding as to what the future looks like.
Okay, and how many did we have last year?
We had 5 last year. When I first got here, if this helps frame it for you, when I first became chief in 2013, we had a total of 16 call people. So we had 4 call people on each group, which supplemented the 2 full-time people we had. So that was workable. It made it happen. Just as Chief Hurley would describe, the reserve program in the summertime, it's the same concept. It just we ran it 12 months a year. But those 16 positions have now gone down to, 4 and 3 by July 1.
Okay, and how many full-time staff total?
We have a total of 18 now, 19 if you include our administrative assistants. So there's myself on during the weekday, the fire prevention officer is on during the weekday, and then we have 4 on each group or each shift, again, rotating around for 7 days a week.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, again, this is one of those things where I hate how high our police and fire budget is overall, but the reality is that we can't even find people to work town jobs because it's so hard to live here. We can't expect people to keep volunteering There's not that many young people. And unfortunately, I think this is just the cost of being a resort town with the kind of summer population that we see and our high elderly population. I mean, people need to know that if they call 911, an ambulance is going to show up. And if we don't have the staff to run an ambulance on a given shift, I mean, that's a problem. And I'd love to say, you know, let's do some recruitment and get some volunteers in here to be on call. But I just don't think it's realistic anymore. I just think that we have transitioned to a cost of living where the people who would normally do that are buckling down to try and continue to stay here, that are year-round residents. And I just don't see us being able to fill all these positions. So, I mean, maybe 2 now, and if for some reason we can recruit people to serve on call to stopgap that, you know, in the near future, then great. I think we should up our game in trying to recruit people to do that, but we can't expect it to be like it used to be. And I think that's unfortunate, but I think that's the reality of our situation right now.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, 2 things. One is, Chief, if you get up at town meeting and start it with, we have 20% more calls, it'll happen. The second thing is, EMTs, call firefighters, are not, in quotes, volunteers. They're paid. It's a good part-time job. It's demanding. I lived with one for a number of years. And they're not what most people mean when they say volunteers is they're not paid. They are paid in Wellfleet. It's just not working out because it's not paid enough. And so, Chief, the need has gone up just as it has for the police department, but not everybody needs the police, but they really need the ambulance. And, you know, best
So,
case scenario, we'd never need the ambulance, but everybody cares in a different way than they do, unfortunately, about the police department, in my experience. Thank you.
okay, so I move to insert Article 15, Fire Department, new staff.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Sorry, Janet.
Sorry, go ahead. I.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Oh, and I.
Okay, I move to recommend Article 15, Fire Department, new staff.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Charlie, Article 16. Should we
Yes.
discuss? Okay,
Yeah.
so,
And that's $20,000 now.
okay, so Chief Polly,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is, you know, I got up last year and the year before, and this has really started to make a difference. We're doing things a little differently in the last 2 years that we've ever done before. So we've actually had 2 individuals that work for us that have taken advantage of this training, where we've been able to help pay the cost of their going from EMT certification to paramedic, which is about $10,000 to $10,500 for that class. So, and to me, this makes a perfect sense because we can pull this money out of the ambulance receipts fund and do exactly what that fund should be doing, is helping with training and recouping costs and maintaining a workforce that, you know, again, it's a little bit of a benefit for them. So.
okay. Mike,
Oh, I don't have my hand up on this. I'm fine with
Okay.
it.
Helen,
Yeah, a question through you, Ryan, to Chief Polly. Do you have currently in the contracts for people that are trained? I know we've had an exchange about this, but not in this situation that we're in right now at the moment. That they have to pay back if they go somewhere else before a certain amount of time. In other
We
words,
do-
why should we train people and then they go off somewhere else right away?
We do have that with the fire academy training. We also, if you look at the summary in this, it does allow, basically it's a step
Oh.
down payback for the town.
Sorry to
So-
take the time. I
That's
didn't-
okay. No, I think it's important that folks know that.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I, hadn't read this draft of the warrant
It's
for that
okay.
article. Sorry.
Okay, I move to insert and recommend Article 16 paramedic training program funding with the following amendment that the sum shall read $20,000 or any other sum.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Charlie, which one?
I think Chief and I are gonna work on 17. I would hold on 18. I would let you know that 19, I believe, should be withdrawn from the warrant.
Okay,
That was when we were gonna have a December town meeting and we had the contractor working in the harbor. But that's not the case anymore, so this should go away.
okay, so which article?
20 would be the next one.
I'm sorry, why are we skipping 18, please?
Oh,
19.
well, I'm sorry, the only reason I was skipping, oh, yeah, you're right, we should insert it.
Yeah.
It was a funding article and we got so many funding problems, but we shouldn't, I'm sorry, Helen, thank you, we should insert that.
And you're talking about,
The Flora 18 Wellfleet Harbor Flora and Fauna Survey. Is that clear,
Yeah,
John?
this certainly strikes me as something that could be held till later, that we don't need to spend money on right now. It would be nice, that to me is in the category of, this would be nice to do, probably useful on some level, but not essential given our budget constraints.
So, last year it was going to be on the town meeting warrant. We had to pull it at the last minute because the funding source that was incorrect. So there was no way to actually fund the article. I think it was even on the warrant that went out. And did we remove it on town meeting floor? Anybody remember?
I can't remember.
remember.
I think it was pulled, Ryan.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was pulled before, but here's the thing, John, you need to know there was extensive conversation, discussion about it, not just on the select board. This is kind of a continuation of something that was called the Curley Report. And John Dwayne is the person that knows the most about it. You could ask him. But it's not like a frill because this kind of finding can be the basis for applying for money. And it's a kind of baseline that if things have changed from the last time this happened, which was way too long ago, you can apply for money. Okay, I'm repeating myself, but there's a good reason for this. It's not a frill, and it was pulled last year because so many things were pulled. And I agree with you. We should be looking at pulling things that aren't necessary, but this is time sensitive. Thank you. Talk to John Dwayne.
John, you have your hand up?
You can put it, or I'll put it down. It was
Okay.
up to them.
So I move to insert Article 18 Wellfleet Harbor Flora and Fauna Survey.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
I'll vote for it.
Michael, aye.
John,
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, I move to recommend Article 18 Wellfleet Harbor Flora and Fauna Survey.
I'm gonna abstain from recommending this right now. I just don't know what the big picture is here until we have our capital, until we do the capital. I don't know what
It's not a capital item.
I know, but the capital items are gonna determine our total expenditures here. Is this to raise and appropriate or is this to borrow? Yeah,
Raise
raise
and-
raise and appropriate. So I'd prefer, I'm gonna abstain from recommending right now, but I don't mind if you guys do.
I'd like to take a vote. Was there a second on the motion?
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John abstain until I talk to John.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Michael abstain.
Okay, motion carries 3-0 with 2 abstentions. So you said Article 20?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So anyway, the governor is proposing level funding chapter 90 funds. So we're just accepting state grants. So it's not competing, doesn't add to our deficit. Last year, we received approximately $242,000. And I suspect it'll be in that same amount.
okay. And this is for authorization to apply for the funding.
Yeah,
So I move to insert and recommend Article 20, Chapter 90 funds.
Second,
Second. Yeah. go
Okay,
ahead.
roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, Charlie?
do you gonna, did you recommend that or just insert it?
Yeah, it was insert and recommend.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I'm sorry. Okay,
Sorry.
good. Yeah, number 21, we are ready to vote on,
Okay,
if you're ready.
yep. Do we have a number for that?
Yeah, that would be at this point, we should use $140,000. And once again, we're not raising this. This is money that we collect through a surcharge on everybody's property cable bill. And then the money is sent to the town and then we use it for PEG access.
Okay, so I move to insert and recommend Article 21, Public Education and Governmental PG Access and Cable Related Fund.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Charlie?
Yeah, 22, if you're ready, it's okay to vote on that. And we're just setting the spending limit for the revolving fund, for the Shellfish revolving fund. So we collect fees and it goes into the revolving fund and we can use that for propagation and other purposes.
How does the board feel on taking this item now, or do we want to wait till Nancy's presents it?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting more information and more input,
Okay.
but
So
we can certainly place it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we can place it, yeah. Is the spending limit higher than it was or the
No.
same?
it's the same.
Okay, if it's the same, then I'm comfortable with it. So I move to insert Article number 22, Shellfish Revolving Fund Spending Limit.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael abstain.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, so I move to recommend Article number 22, Shellfish Revolving Fund Spending Limit.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan,
Michael
I.
abstain.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Okay. I'm assuming Article 23, right, Charlie?
Yeah, should 23 be the school committee?
The school fire suppression, yeah, or I don't know. So why don't we ask Chief Polly? He's been working on this, so.
I've been working on it from in the very beginning of it. Now, and if I may, Mr. Chair, is my understanding correct that the elementary school building is owned by the town of Wellfleet? That was
Yeah.
always my understanding.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I would say that the suppression system has to be put in by code. It should have been put in back when the addition was done in the early 90s, as I've mentioned. And if this is, the building's in fact owned by the town of Wellfleet, then we're protecting, the town asset there. And at some point, if the system does not go in, then I would expect the state fire marshal would come down and have a conversation with the town and say, okay, how are we going to handle this thing? I've been in those situations before, and it can be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's only getting more expensive. But John,
Isn't there also a liability issue associated with not having that?
Well, I would say that that's a possibility, John, because of the fact that we've identified a situation that is not correct. We know it's not correct. And, you know, it's very problematic. It really is.
okay. So I move to insert and recommend article number 23. Is the line item the correct amount, the 2.2?
Yes, that's a number that was recently provided to me by the school department.
Okay, so I move to insert and recommend article number 23, elementary school fire suppression project.
Second,
One second.
Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay,
Ryan?
yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do this. I said something, I really misspoke a few articles ago. Can I say 2 simple sentences to correct that? Please.
Okay,
Yeah, it was, you know, I'm not batting 100 tonight in terms of expressing myself. It could have sounded like I was unfavorably or, you know, preferring the fire department's needs to the police department's needs, and they are both equally necessary. I'm just very worried that there is negative feeling about the overrides for those positions, and I really want both departments to get what they need. And we're very familiar with what they need because they've been asking in a very civil way for them for a couple of years. So I misspoke, and if there seemed to be a bad comparison to the, you know, fire department by me, I didn't mean that. I just put it clumsily. Thank you for letting me say that, Ryan.
okay. Charlie,
24, do you want to just insert for the moment?
so 24, this is, again, we asked the Marina Advisory Committee to do something. And we didn't, when we discussed it as part of the capital improvement project, we didn't want to consider it until the Marina Advisory Committee did what's requested of them.
Okay.
But Mike,
Yeah, I would withhold to insert this.
Okay.
okay, do we want to remove it at this point or leave it?
The one thing is that I know that there's some infrastructure bill money set aside for marina infrastructure that I think we need to maybe think about. I don't want to remove it yet,
Okay,
but
John,
I don't want to insert it right now either.
John,
so are we waiting for the MAC to do something before we handle this? Is that the idea?
Well, we asked them to do an assessment, and not to do needs an assessment, but to do a management plan. And they responded by doing a request for basically raising funding for hiring someone else to do the assessment of the marina. And I just went to the MAC meeting not too long ago. And I think that they're going to be doing the management plan that the select board requested. I think this needs to be coming from the harbor master. If there's something like that, if there's something specific that we're requesting an assessment or a need of a project, but I don't think there's been any sort of preliminary. I guess I don't feel like we should be putting this in there unless the harbor master comes back and says, hey, actually, we need to do an assessment for this particular reason. You know?
Janet,
So, being on the dredging committee and talking to a lot of people down at the harbor, including the harbor master, this has been discussed for 10 to 20 years, and there has been a plan, but it's already old. And I think we should at least insert it because, and get discussion, but, if you guys have been in the harbor masters, whatever building, we know bathrooms down there are bad. We talk so much about the gas tanks, there's just a lot that goes on. And whether it's gonna be 30,000 or not is another question, but I think we should at least vote to insert it and then
Well,
get more information.
Mr. Chair.
1 second. So until the Marine Advisory Committee does what's requested of them, we would be paying partially for duplicated work effort. I don't know. I would rather just take no action tonight on it. And if, everything's done in time, then we can insert it.
All right. Yeah, we could get more information. Yeah.
Yep. Mike and then John.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, this is for a facilities needs and assessment. I think the harbor master is capable of doing a needs assessment and a facilities needs assessment at the marina on his own. Like, we need new bathroom facilities and we need new work done on some of the infrastructure down there. We don't need to pay $30,000 for somebody to tell us that,
Well, it would be for a plan. It's not just,
Well-
it's for a design.
This isn't
And-
that though. This is what they're requesting is $30,000 for someone to do a facility needs assessment. Just what we
Yeah.
need. I don't understand why they would even put that in here, really.
Okay, John,
Alright.
and then I would like to move on because I don't think we can have Will or somebody come in and present at a later date. John?
I agree with Mike, being a regular user of the marina and also having been on the MAC for 6 years, it seems to me that between the harbor master and his staff and the MAC, we should be able to come up with this assessment without spending $30,000.
Mike, I haven't spoken to this yet.
I mean, I would like, as I said, yeah.
Yeah,
Take
we
no
can. do
action.
that.
Yeah, take no action right now tonight, and then we can have Will come back and discuss it then, if that makes sense. I think we should do the same for article number 25, which is the transfer station needs assessment project, and wait till Jay Norton's available or Mike Sakali to discuss that as well.
I agree.
Ryan, I haven't spoken to this yet.
Which one?
Either one, but the first one, if you wish.
I mean,
I haven't said
Okay,
anything. I'd like
okay,
to
but-
agree.
okay, but yeah.
I completely agree with what Mike said. And simply, it's obvious what's needed. Start pegging away at it. We don't need an assessment of it to sanctify it. It's obvious what needs to be done. Start doing it. Come to us with an article asking for $30,000 to fix the bathrooms.
Okay, so
Thank you.
again, we've already covered all that, so I'd like to move on. And this will probably be the last article for tonight before we do our normal closing. So article number 26, again, I would wait till Suzanne is available,
Yeah.
or Terry Fraser, or both of them.
Yes.
What would be the next one, Charlie? We'll do one more, and that will be it.
Yeah, I think the only one maybe we're ready for is 28, because we've talked about that before.
Okay.
I believe the board's talked about it a couple of times.
Yeah.
This is that survey cost for the Heron Point Road in Lieutenant Island.
Okay. So I move to insert article number 28, Lieutenant Island Road, Heron Point Road Survey Expense.
Second,
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I,
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Oh, and I.
Okay, I move to recommend article number 28.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
what is the purpose of the survey briefly? Do we know?
to determine where the road is in relation to the layout. We went over this a couple times.
Okay, I just needed a reminder.
Yep.
I kind of remember now. Yeah.
Okay, so I move to recommend article number 28.
Oh, and
Second.
second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Michael, I.
Yes. Yeah. Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
And I.
Okay, and it is 8:40. So,
Okay.
sorry, I need to stop my alarm. There we go.
That's good. That's a good tool to have
Yeah.
during meetings.
Okay, so stop share. Thank you. Okay, we are select board reports. Are there any?
I had one, but I forgot it. Can't remember at this point.
Okay, I would say that tomorrow, I noticed that the planning board has posted a discussion of the two zoning bylaws that we referred to them for a public hearing at 7, just so people are aware of that. It's not a public hearing. It's just a discussion of the zoning bylaws. So are there any others?
Yeah,
Yep.
planning board is also having a public hearing the same time. I think the action is to create a need for a special permit to operate a contractor's yard in the commercial district of Wellfleet. In all districts, you need to have a special permit to have a contractor's yard. So
Okay.
that's what's on this. And then I think they're gonna have another public hearing where they eliminate the use of contractors' yards in the town of Wellfleet in all districts completely. That, I don't know when
Well,
that
they
one,
gotta, yeah. So that's on the planning board tomorrow also,
that's on the, well, the first one,
or the
I believe
ZBA?
is just to make it a special permit. Then they're gonna have another public hearing on one that will eliminate the use
Okay, all right.
completely. So there will not be any new contractor yards allowed in Wellfleet until they resolve whatever, I don't know.
They'll have to redefine it.
Okay, John, you have your hand up?
Oh, it didn't get.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, this could have been, what Mike just said could have been said in the beginning, in the public announcements. It's good for the public to know that the planning board's going to do this. The contractor's yard issue is something that could have been done better about 20 years ago. And they're taking it up again. And what Mike just said are some of the things they're considering. They may not arrive at those conclusions in the end. Thank you.
Those are the two things they voted to pass. So that's my report. They voted to pass those two things. Now
I
they're
thought they were
having,
doing that tomorrow.
no, now they have a public hearing because they already voted to approve that. And then it'll go to town meeting. They can withdraw it if they want, but they've already passed it.
Yeah, well, they can change it after the public hearing too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, let's
I
stop.
prefer not to have a discussion on what the
Right.
planning board may or may not be doing. So town administrators report. Do you have anything, Charlie? I think the one in the packet is the same as last week.
It is. The only thing I'll just mention is I am going to be speaking to the Wellfleet Forum tomorrow night. So I'll give them an update of what's going on in town. And then the only other thing I'll mention is we continue to work doing interviews for the town accountant's position, and I hope to have something to present to you soon. I'm a little optimistic. And then we're going to be starting reviewing resumes in executive session for the town administrator's position. So that's moving along splendidly.
Okay, awesome.
Down.
Do you know about when the select board might be interviewing potential candidates?
For the town administrator,
Yes,
I'll have a better idea after Thursday's meeting.
Okay,
how many people we agree to interview and when we are going to start interviews.
okay, yeah, yeah, okay. Topics for future discussion?
Warren,
I just want to say we should continue with the shellfish and arc discussion.
Yep, so there's a public hearing posted for that for the 22nd. I am not 100% sure if it will happen or not. It depends on if everybody's ready for the hearing. Just so you're aware. Mike?
Oh, I don't mean to have my hand up again.
Okay, John?
Yeah, through you to Charlie, any word on progress on the town treasurer?
We just,
Tired one.
yeah, we just,
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
I think you're thinking about the town accountants, but I'm working on the town accountant. Yep.
That's right. We did hire a treasurer. Sorry.
yeah.
we have maybe.
When are they starting?
The town treasurer?
Yes,
That individual would be providing notice to his current employer tomorrow morning. So it would be with about 2.5 weeks.
okay. Any others?
Right in
Correspondence,
time for town meeting.
correspondence and
Go ahead.
vacancy report, nothing really. So, with that,
Last week, because you didn't, the only reason I put.
yeah, I understand. So with that, I guess I move to adjourn.
Helen
Second.
said,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I. Hello?
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Awesome. Well, everybody have a good night. We actually
Thank
did about
you.
all that we could do for the warrant tonight.
Good job.
So awesome.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Hey, Ryan, before we leave, just, I know I missed some of the new articles, so maybe we can talk in the morning. So I
Yep.
can, okay, thank you.
All right,
Okay, bye.
bye.